Welcome to Direction Northeast. Hello, I'm Flipper Derland. This program is a presentation of the Mass Communications Department of Northeast State Community College and is produced by students through the college's video production facilities. This series of programs is designed to bring you the student perspective on events and happenings throughout Northeast Tennessee. The program is a part of the classroom and laboratory learning process for students in broadcasting and advertising public relations part of the mass communications area. They say life is choices. In essence, we are the choices that we make. Our guest on this episode of Direction Northeast made some choices that forever changed his life. We'll learn more about the dilemma that Chuck Gallagher was in and how you can learn more about ethical choices from him.
I don't train like you.
I don't have the same skin as you.
I don't wear my hair like you.
I don't dance like you.
I don't come from the same place as you.
But I will give you CPR.
When you help the American Red Cross, you help America.
Our guest for this episode is Mr. Chuck Gallagher. At 26, Chuck became the youngest tax partner in a regional CPA firm and was one of only 3 CPAs in the country asked to testify before the U.S. House Ways and Means Committee on a new employee benefits provision of the tax law. Then, in the middle of a rising career, Gallagher lost everything because he made some bad choices. To talk to us today about making ethical choices is Mr. Chuck Gallagher. Welcome to Direction Northeast.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's great to be here.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you. If you wouldn't mind setting this up for us, what were some of the circumstances and choices that led you from being a successful and obviously important CPA to some of the circumstances that affected you later on through your career?
Well, Flipper, every choice has a consequence. And so you alluded to the fact that I was tax partner in a firm and had testified before Congress and so forth, and all of those things, they were true, but I guess at the time, back in the mid-'80s, I was living the concept of being somebody, being successful was a function of perhaps what was surrounding you, the home you lived in, the car you drove, the watch on your arm, the material possessions. And here we are now in 2010, and I have to say that still we find that there's a lot of materiality that seems to define the success that a person enjoys. Mm-hmm. And in my case, and I'm not trying to be funny with the way I put this, but I was so caught up in the material world that I became what I refer to as overextended and underfunded, or I had too much debt. And in the midst of a driving economic recession now, we find that the headlines are riddled with people who have too much debt, losing their homes, losing their cars, and the financial disaster that can take place as a result of that.
Right.
So those initial choices, the choices of trying to define myself by something that really doesn't define success, became the catalyst for me to make a different set of choices that completely ruined my career. Now, and I guess the best way to answer that question, maybe more succinctly, is in order to fund the rising debt that I had, I made the choice to steal money from clients. And I have to say, Flipper, I'm not proud to make that statement to you, but it is a reality. And in doing that process, what ended up happening was I made a set of choices that fell into a very distinct pattern. And as I said, every choice has a consequence, so those choices became life-changing.
Absolutely. So how has that affected you? Obviously, you've come a long way from that point. Your life seems to have taken a much different path than you were when you made that choice. What are you doing now to make amends for that, you could say, guilt that you might carry for that?
Well, let me put it to you in a simple framework. When you make a choice, typically that is driven by a set of behaviors. There are 3 things that most people will find that take place. If you're intelligent, if you know the difference between right and wrong, between ethics or lack of ethics, 3 things happen. Number 1, there's typically need. In my case, I needed money. And that seems very obvious, but need can take a variety of forms. The second thing is opportunity. And as a CPA, a trusted person in the financial community, I had the opportunity to tap into clients' funds, which became the second component of good gone bad. And the third was rationalization. I began to rationalize that what I was doing was, how do I want to put it, a loan. It was theft, but I rationalized that what I was doing was actually okay. So when you combine need, opportunity, and rationalization, you really have the perfect storm for a person to make good choices that can go bad, and then the consequences follow. And I think you know, in my case, although the viewers may not, the consequence for me ultimately was federal prison. But I figured out something. If the choices that I made that were bad choices, that were inappropriate, that were unethical and illegal, could lead me to a disastrous consequence, then the reality was I could likewise make a set of choices that would be empowering, enlivening, and would give me a different outcome. So when I was released from federal prison, although at that point I literally had nothing and was released as a convicted felon, I understood that making a different set of choices could truly change my life. My prior choices changed my life, so why not do that, but in reverse? So I looked at the choices that I made as the types of things that could empower me, and that literally has been life-changing over the past 20 to 25 years.
Wow. And it really seems to me that if there is any time that we could be talking about something like this now, it's incredibly appropriate. Whereas those decisions that you made were, like you said, 20, 25 years ago, there have been so many echoes of that in current events and in the news media and stuff like that, especially, like you mentioned, with the deepening recession and the crisis over Wall Street and Main Street. How have you seen that echoed throughout the financial industry as a whole?
Well, it's been interesting to watch because people have, especially in the early 2000s, 2003, 4, 5, 6, 7, as there was almost a euphoric attitude that you could do nothing wrong. Credit card companies would lavish people with card applications. If you were a student in college, good golly, everybody wanted you to have credit. It was easy and simple to get. The problem is, every choice has a consequence. And so if you get to the place where you are so burdened with debt that you can't pay it off, need increases. Well, that's the first step to what we have seen take place in my life in the past and what others are echoing today. So need increases. If there is opportunity and you begin to rationalize your behavior, it has to be someone else's fault. It's really not me. I'm making this choice. I'm going to pay it back. You can name it. There's always some way to rationalize that behavior. Then the next step is, there's the outcome. And so today, if you look at, you say, for example, in 2009, Bernie Madoff had pled guilty and was sentenced to 150 years in prison. It's a living example. And day in and day out, we see people making the media, so to speak, who have done that. Wesley Snipes. Wesley Snipes right now is free, awaiting his appeal on a 3-year prison sentence for failing to file his tax returns. Need, opportunity, rationalization can affect the smartest of individuals to create the illusion that allows us to believe that what we're doing that is wrong somehow is right.